Welcome to Journals of the Whilling from the Tumbling Saber podcast, a member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Network. Take your first step into a larger world by checking out the network on the web at starwarscommonwealth.com, on iTunes, Facebook, and Twitter. Hey everybody, welcome back to Journals of the Whilling, our fourth installment of our bi-weekly or bi-monthly, I don't know, look at the printed word in Star Wars. And this week I'm joined once again by Steve. How you doing, my friend?
Hey Kyle, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good as always. And listen man, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't kick off Journals of the Whilling today with just a couple minutes on this week's big, huge news. We just learned the title of Star Wars Episode 8, and that's going to be The Last Jedi. So what were your thoughts?
Definitely intrigued. I think the lead up to, the Force Awakens title, that was packed with so much emotion. I think this time around, I was really looking at, I was looking for hints of, where the story was going. I think that's what we all were doing. It's definitely intriguing. My fiance brought up a good point, and I know people were talking about this, that Jedi could be singular, could be plural. I just think it leaves a lot to think about. What about you? Yeah,
same thing. Like it can lead you down any number of paths, and that's what we do as Star Wars fans. We dissect the living hell out of things. And we look for things where things may not be. It may just be, like Mark Hamill had a reaction to it. He was doing an interview with, I don't know who, but Kyle Mooney from SNL was sitting right next to him, which I thought was interesting. And just as the news broke, Mark Hamill was doing this interview, and the guy just, I guess, he thinking quickly, said, "Hey, Mark, The Last Jedi. You heard they've let the news out." Yeah, cool. Okay. So Mark, what do you think of the title? And he said, "Yeah, I like it. It's simple, it's minimal, and it's just he just liked it for two very simple reasons." And that's kind of where my head was at with it. It's a very simple title. It fits, I think. And we'll get more into it when we get back to the Tumbling Saber podcast. But I don't really have a problem with it.
No, it definitely moves away from like the grandiose titles. It's not Empire Strikes Back or Attack of the Clones. It's very, it's a little more mysterious. It could also be a little more straightforward, depending on what the plot is. It could just be as simple as, it's Luke. This is Luke's story. He is the last Jedi. So, like you said, as Star Wars fans, we have to peel that onion until there's nothing left.
Exactly. That is exactly what we do best.
But, it's simple, but, again, just leaves a lot to interpret.
And interesting that it broke with pattern in a couple different ways. The Last Jedi doesn't rhyme at all with The Empire Strikes Back or Attack of the Clones as a second installment, whereas The Phantom Menace, A New Hope, The Force Awakens, they all kind of, I don't know the word I'm looking for.
Well, they're all three words.
Yeah, they all kind of rhythmically.
There's a beat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there's a beat to it, and with The Last Jedi, they've broken that, and I don't know. I guess it's better to get the right title.
Mm-hmm.
And they also went and changed the color of the logo, which some people find red. Yeah, it's an aggressive red color now, which was typically used in the darkest chapters or at least the third installments of previous trilogies. And people are reading a lot into that it could just mean dark things. But anyway, I'm hopeful for episode 8. Nothing I've seen or heard at this point makes me feel like I'm going to get let down.
Yeah, no, me neither. I mean, I definitely think, it's intentional to break that mold, that beat, that, because think back to like English class when you learn like poetry. There's a beat to the stanzas, and usually when a stanza diverges from that beat, it's done to kind of highlight and make a point of whatever that last statement is or whatever that difference is. So I mean, I don't know. And just kind of like what we heard from the stars so far, I imagine episode 8 being very different and trying to set itself apart from the other films. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, I think Rian Johnson's a very original guy with a lot of original ideas rattling around his head. And, he's a dyed-in-the-wool Star Wars fan. So I feel like he's going to want to honor the saga and keep things close and familiar, but push it off in another direction. And that had me sort of concerned and apprehensive a little bit. I've mentioned many times on the podcast before that he's somebody that, yeah, he's a great filmmaker, terrific. But I was a little bit afraid that he'd be too intent on being really clever and quote unquote smart. I'm doing air quotes here. And trying to do something too original with Star Wars that might be off-putting for fans who are used to a certain formula. But I'm opening myself up a little bit to it now. I'm hoping he pushes off in a new direction a little bit. I don't want it to be completely unrecognizable.
Right, because you got to think though what the opposite of that is, and there could be too much nostalgia, which was a common reference or a common critique of The Force Awakens, which, I mean, I thought it was perfect, but a lot of people had issues with the amount of too much familiarity in The Force Awakens. I think you guys were talking about it on the last Tumbling Saber, if I'm right.
Yeah, we did, and we've spoken about it a bunch, everybody has. That, yeah, fine. Listen, they completely. It was a soft reboot of A New Hope. We get it. It had a lot of beats that were exactly the same, and a lot of locations which were only different in name. We get it, but still, we had fun. We enjoyed it. The new characters are great, but I think we're done with that. I think we had sort of our new honeymoon with Star Wars. And now it's time for something new. I think that's where most fans are at now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal situation would be equal parts nostalgia and something new. I mean, because you don't want the story to stay stagnant. You don't want it to be too much of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we end up getting the same critique for episode 8 that it was way too close to Empire Strikes Back, I think that's going to be sorely disappointing. And I know some beats will repeat just by virtue of it being the middle part of a 3-part movie or a 3-part story. That's storytelling. That's the way it works. But if they do the same thing on purpose, I think that will leave a sour taste in even more people's mouth this time. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the movies. We're here to talk about books, man.
Oh, yeah. The good written word.
Yeah, we're addressing a weakness here in the Tumbling Saber network. And a couple synopses came out. I don't know, did they actually come out this week? Or have they been out for a while and this is our first sit down? I feel like the Thrawn synopsis just came out. Or maybe that was that was last week.
That was last week. And then Empire's End was this week. This is the first time I'm reading it was today.
That's right.
I'm assuming it's just now, because I would have seen it on my Twitter feed somewhere if it came out earlier.
All right, so let's recap these quickly. I put the Thrawn synopsis in my back pocket last week, knowing that we'd be getting together to talk about this. So, I'm anxious to get your thoughts, and I'll do a quick and hopefully non-flubbed read of the Thrawn synopsis here. So in this definitive novel, readers will follow Thrawn's rise to power, uncovering the events that created one of the most iconic villains in Star Wars history. I feel like it's a bit of a stretch, but on we go. One of the most cunning and ruthless warriors in the history of the Galactic Empire, Grand Admiral Thrawn is also one of the most captivating characters in the Star Wars universe. From his introduction in best-selling author Timothy Zahn's classic Heir to the Empire, through his continuing adventures in Dark Force, blah, 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 blah. I'm not reading all that. Here we go. We're going to get to the story here. After Thrawn is rescued from exile by Imperial soldiers, His deadly ingenuity and keen tactical abilities swiftly capture the attention of Emperor Palpatine. And just as quickly, Thrawn proves to be as indispensable to the Empire as he is ambitious, as devoted as its most loyal servant, Darth Vader. They had to get his name in there. And of course. And a brilliant warrior never to be underestimated. On missions to rout smugglers, snare spies, and defeat pirates, he triumphs time and again, even as his renegade methods infuriate superiors while inspiring ever greater admiration from the Empire. As one promotion follows another in his rapid ascension to greater power, he schools his trusted aide, Ensign Eli Vanto, in the arts of combat and leadership, and the secrets of claiming victory. But even though Thrawn dominates the battlefield, he has much to learn in the arena of politics, where ruthless administrator Arinda Price holds the power to be a potent ally or a brutal enemy. All these lessons will be put to the ultimate test when Thrawn rises to admiral and must pit all the knowledge, instincts, and battle forces at his command against an insurgent uprising that threatens not only innocent lives, but also the Empire's grip on the galaxy and his own carefully laid plans for future ascendancy. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah. I'm getting a lot of Krennic vibes a little bit. Only in the sense that, we're following one man's rise to power in the Empire. I think it would be kind of awesome if we got a little Krennic cameo. But when does this take place? Do we get any idea?
I feel like this takes place before where we are in the Rebels timeline now, for sure. I think this probably goes back probably several years before that. I don't know if they've ever stated when, but I really think this goes back maybe 5 to 8 years before Rebels.
I mean, I'm imagining probably closer to Revenge of the Sith. Just like more close to episode 3.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be. It could be right in the Revenge of the Sith ballpark.
Now, did you read the original Thrawn trilogy?
Yeah, but it was so long ago. I literally don't remember a thing about it.
Because I was going to ask you if you noticed any similar beats or anything mirrored from that original. Obviously, that trilogy takes place after Return of the Jedi, but I'm wondering if if Timothy Zahn is taking this character and kind of mirroring the original origin story.
I guess in making him a brilliant tactician, yes. Ambition, yes. Aside from that, it's hard to really say. I don't think. But again, I don't remember those books. All I remember about those books is that I enjoyed them. That's really the only thing I remember at all about those books. There's something in the synopsis here that kind of jumped out to me right away. Where is it now? On missions to rout smugglers, snare spies, and defeat pirates. And this is what we do as Star Wars fans. Who are they talking about here? Rout smugglers. Are we going to talk about the whatever smuggling ring Han Solo may or may not be a part of? Snare spies. Could we be talking about Cassian Andor? Could we be talking about any familiar rebel names? And defeat pirates. Who's the most famous pirate that we know? Hondo Ohnaka. Is he going to be in this book?
Maybe. I'm thinking they might be following the trend where we're going to get more and more crossover. Obviously we got Palpatine and Vader, so it'll be cool to see some interaction there. Because have we gotten much of like Vader with him in Rebels? I can't quite remember.
No, I don't think they've interacted at all.
So this will be interesting to see. At least from those two confirmed characters, plus a couple of people we haven't met yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if we got a little cameo from the Rogue One crew, or even Hondo. Like you said, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I guess maybe you would start. I guess he would have to start small and work his way up to bigger fish.
Maybe so. Correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't read the Thrawn trilogy, but wasn't part of his character development that there was a sense of racism in the Empire whatever race he was. Do we have a name for his race?
Yeah, they're Chiss, Chiss.
So I know he had faced some racism within the Empire. Is that right?
I think he did. I think you're right. And there's definitely a thing with the Empire where they only value humans as servants, which obviously Thrawn sets himself apart in that respect.
Right. So he's really the only non-human, of significant power within the Empire. So I imagine that because of his race, maybe at the beginning they were kind of just giving him these low rank, easy missions. The smugglers, the spies, the pirates. And they were just kind of using him. They're taking advantage of his abilities, and they were just like, all right, we can give him the small stuff.
Yeah, we can maybe get him to do the dirty work and clean up hyperspace lanes for us and get rid of smugglers who might be, making things difficult for us or operating black markets where we don't want them. That kind of thing.
Right, but it seems like he really makes a name for himself, given that, he kind of breaks through those, like, racial barriers, and he gets Palpatine's attention, and he quickly, climbs the ranks, despite all that crap he's going through.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely climbs those ranks quickly, and it sounds like the book might end as he's introduced into Rebels.
You think it'll go that far?
I'm looking at this sentence here. All these lessons will be put to the ultimate test when Thrawn rises to Admiral and must pit all the knowledge, instincts, and battle forces at his command against an insurgent uprising that threatens not only innocent lives, but also the Empire's grip on the galaxy. I wonder if they're talking about the rebellion.
I think it's very much. I'm gonna give you, like, that's probably 90% possible. Or I think that's probably what it's gonna be.
If it's not that, it's got to be like his final conquest before Palpatine kind of brings him into the mainstream to actually catch the rebels.
If it's not the rebels, what other insurgents could it be?
I feel like there was a reference in his first episode, Thrawn's first episode, where maybe I feel like somebody, maybe it was Price or maybe Constantine or one of these guys, Callus maybe too. It's all escaping me now, but I feel like somebody mentioned something that he did that was of real significance that got him on the Emperor's map or got him into the position that he was now in. I can't remember anymore.
I'll have to go back and look. Sometimes if you go on IMDb, you can kind of see key quotes from the episode. So I might have to do that.
Yeah, that's a good tip. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that book. I wasn't sure if I was going to jump on it, and I'm still not 100% convinced that I will. Thankfully, I still have like 2.5 months to decide. It comes out April 11th, and it's a whopping 448 pages.
That's a breeze.
It'll probably only take me 7 months to read. We'll have our review ready for Christmas.
Hey, you're not Corey now.
No, I'm probably worse, actually.
Uh-oh.
I'm probably worse. Like, I just read like 10 pages a day, and it just takes me forever. And I fall asleep halfway through, and I have to reread. I'm a disaster when it comes to reading. So maybe, I don't know if I should be doing like a Star Wars book podcast if I'm so bad at this reading thing.
That's why I turn to audiobooks, and 2, I turn to comic books. At least there are pictures.
Yes, the pretty pictures are easier to take, aren't they? All right, so let's. I assume that you're definitely looking forward to this one.
Yeah. I don't know how soon I'll be able to get to it. I still have to get through Aftermath, and I have to get through Life Debt, and now fitting segue, Empire's End. Yeah,
so more immediately in our future comes Empire's End. That drops, it's actually quite soon, in less than a month, February 21st. I feel like that, also 448 pages. Is that just like a Is that a fake number? Are we being faked here?
Maybe they're following like some standard now. I don't know if we're getting. Wait, that was the same number as Thrawn?
Yeah. Are we being punked?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's like a holding place number until we actually get the actual count.
Yeah, I feel like somebody did a copy paste of the page and forgot to actually change that information. Anyway, let's take a look at the synopsis.
All right. As the final showdown between the New Republic and the Empire draws near, all eyes turn to a once isolated planet, Jakku. The Battle of Endor shattered the Empire, scattering its remaining forces across the galaxy. But the months following the rebellion's victory have not been easy. The fledgling New Republic has suffered a devastating attack from the Imperial remnant, forcing the new democracy to escalate their hunt for the hidden enemy. For her role in the deadly ambush, Grand Admiral Ray Sloan is the most wanted Imperial war criminal, and one-time rebel pilot Nora Wexley, back in service at Leia's urgent request, is leading the hunt. But more than just loyalty to the New Republic drives Nora forward. Her husband was turned into a murderous pawn in Sloane's assassination plot, and now she wants vengeance as much as justice. But Sloane, too, is on a furious quest, pursuing the treacherous Gallius Rax to the barren planet Jakku. As the true mastermind behind the Empire's devastating attack, Rax has led the Empire to its defining moment. The cunning strategist has gathered the powerful remnants of the Empire's war machine, preparing to execute the late Emperor Palpatine's final plan. As the Imperial fleet orbits Jakku, an armada of Republic fighters closes in to finish what began at Endor. Nora and her crew soar into the heart of an apocalyptic clash that will leave land and sky alike scorched. And the future of the galaxy will finally be decided.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody read Aftermath 1 and 2, none of this really comes as a surprise. Life Debt kind of ended on Jakku just as the Imperial fleet was pulling in. So you kind of see where they were going. This whole book seems like it's going to be one long fight.
Yeah, kind of that. Yeah, the whole Battle of Jakku sounds like it's going to be the entire 400 and however many pages.
Now, I hope this one offers a good payoff.
Right, because I mean...
Yeah, I feel like part 1 and 2 have been pretty tough slogs altogether. 2 was a huge improvement on 1, but I'm hoping for big things from 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting through 2. None of this was really I mean, I guess the husband plot point was a bit of a spoiler. But,
Oh, you hadn't read that yet.
No.
Oh, surprise.
Oops. Nah, it's cool. It's cool. And it gives me something to look forward to.
At a certain point in the book, you kind of see where it's going. I feel like that became obvious at a certain point in the book.
So, yeah, I mean, it seems interesting. And I think, like you said, it hopefully it's a big payoff. Because this has kind of been... I mean, this series hasn't really been the most welcome by fans.
Definitely not.
I think it's a departure from expectations. But I think once you kind of, adjust your expectations, going from 1 to 2 and now into 3, it's enjoyable in kind of its own right. But, it's definitely not what people were expecting kind of going into it in the first place.
Yeah, not at all. I think, sometimes people don't read, or maybe a lot of times people don't read. And when they saw Aftermath was coming out, that was like the first book of the new canon, I think. And everybody assumed it was going to be about the further adventures of Luke, Han, and Leia post-Jedi. And it was anything but that.
Right.
Well,
this was in the lead-up. Journey to the Force Awakens was the first Aftermath. And I think... I mean... I think it would have been a little too silly if they revealed too much. I think they were trying to be really careful on not spoiling much in The Force Awakens. That movie was still very much shrouded in mystery. So just kind of getting those little snippets of like Han and Leia. And Leia was in the first one, right? In a scene? Or was it just Han?
The first Aftermath book?
Yeah.
Were either of them in? I feel like Leia was in it, but I don't know if Han. I don't think Han was in it.
Han, unless I was thinking Life Debt, but I think in the first one, Han and Chewie had a scene where they were told about Kashyyyk.
Oh, maybe it was like an interlude.
It was like an interlude. It was like a brief little like, and I guess they're continuing that in the second one, but it was like that first instance where we got mentioning of those two and Kashyyyk. And
yeah, you might be right. It was one of those things where I think fans finally get to Han and Chewie in the Aftermath book, and they're like, "No, don't end." It was like a 2 or 3 page interlude.
Right. It was so brief.
Yeah. Like I said, 2 got a lot better, a lot more action, a lot more connections to the originals, and you felt more situated at that point, which is natural for a part 2. But I'm expecting big things from part 3. It's going to have to give us a lot of information, I think.
I mean, now we're talking over a year now since The Force Awakens come out. So like now they can kind of really delve into the Battle of Jakku and without fear of spoiling the new trilogy, you know? Because I think the marketing campaign, at least for The Force Awakens, they really didn't want us knowing much of like what was going on with the original trio. And so I think now they're kind of free to divulge a little more.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I we're sitting here wondering if Gallius Rax is in fact Snoke. The mysterious fleet admiral from Aftermath Part 1. Then it turns out to be Gallius Rax in Life Debt, and oh boy, he sounds an awful lot like Snoke, doesn't he? But sometimes he doesn't. Is he? Isn't he? I don't know if they're even going to give us the answer in Empire's End. I don't know if Snoke is something they want to hold for the movies.
Yes, that's going to be a movie payoff, Snoke.
Ah.
That's something, because it's got to be, you got to think the casual Star Wars fan is just seeing the movies. So they're going to, unless they do like a repeat reveal, they reveal it in the books, but then you run the risk of that being spoiled for everybody else. So, I think that's a movie thing. As much as I want it in the books for us, you have to think of like kind of the larger Star Wars crowd.
Yeah, well, so if Snoke or a confirmation of Gallius Rax, if they do confirm his identity, it's going to be that he's not Snoke.
Right, that'll be kind of like it's almost like playing Clue. It's like it's not him.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of like working up to who it's not, and then you can get to who it actually is.
Exactly. All right, so I'm definitely in on Empire's End. I've read Part 1 and 2. If I had to give an overall score, it would be somewhere in the 6.5 to 7 range.
For the 2 as a whole, or
exactly
which one?
Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, if I had to individually, I would I'd probably give a 6 to the first one, maybe a 5.5, and that's kind of fallen. I think I gave it a better grade after my first reading, but the shine has come off that book for me a little bit. So I would give it no better than a 6. The second book I'd probably give a 7.5 to.
Okay, I haven't finished the second one, but I think that's fair on the first one. It's still fresh in my head, so I probably would give it a 6 rather than like a 5.5. I would probably a solid 6, maybe 6.5. I'm not far enough into the second one where I can give it a solid rating, but I'm enjoying it so far. I think it picks up pretty well, and like you said, you know these characters already, so you're able to kind of go into it already invested. So it kind of carried that familiarity over to it.
Yeah, and the characters definitely are more relatable in the second one.
Yeah.
And some of them are really funny too.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'm in on Empire's End. That's one book that, love it or hate it, I'm invested at this point. I'm going to see Chuck Wendig's work through to the end.
I'm with you on that. And then Thrawn, I don't know if I'm going to read it that month, but I'm definitely going to read it. I think I'll have to see where they take him in Rebels as far as gauging my excitement for it.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, because right now I'm thinking of him as just who he, because I never read the original trilogy, so all I really know of Thrawn is what I've heard about him and what I've seen on Rebels. And right now I'm not super, super crazy about him as a character. I mean, he's definitely intriguing. He's interesting. You know, he's kind of got that really smart way. I like those smart, cunning kinds of villains. So he's got that going for him, and I really do like him in that sense, but I definitely want to see that trajectory as far as kind of getting my interests in the backstory a little more.
Yep, I agree with you there. All right, so let's with that, let's move into books that we actually do own. You've been into the Star Wars Atlas.
Yeah. Let me just open that baby up, and yeah, I mean, it's really cool. It's a big book, so it kind of fits in my bookshelf a little awkwardly. I kind of have to lay it on top of the other books, so I haven't really found the perfect place to store it yet. But as soon as you open it, you kind of get... Now that I'm looking at it, at first I thought it was a Death Star, but now I'm like, it could be Starkiller Base. I forget. You know, it's got like a... You open it, it's kind of got a rustic... It's almost like, you know, when you would do those old projects in school where you try to make like a copy of like an old piece of paper and you use like the tea bag and you stain it like brown. So when you open it, it's kind of got these stains, and they you know, they kind of make it look like an old book, like it's been in some Jedi library or something somewhere, and that's kind of cool. I appreciate that. Kind of cool little details. Illustrations. Kind of looking for the name of the illustrator. They did a pretty cool job. Tim McDonough. I almost want to say McDonough, but it's a little shorter. It's Tim Mc something Irish. McDonough. Written and edited by Emil Fortune and designed by Richie Hull. So they kind of give you a cool little introduction, written from someone within the Star Wars universe, about the book itself and a little history of why it was put together. In the first kind of 2-page spread, you get a shot of the galaxy, and this is kind of my favorite part. It comes almost first thing in the book, but it's my favorite just because it gives you a layout of all the planets. So it breaks it down into like the deep core. You get the core worlds, the colonies, inner rim, expansion region, mid rim, outer rim, unknown, and then wild space. So it's kind of cool, and it gives you a really cool perspective. So you get an idea of where all these planets were. So let's try to say, for example, like I didn't realize Hoth was so close to Bespin. There were neighboring planets, for example. I don't know if they made that clear in the original trilogy, but they are very close. What else? Yavin 4 is pretty close to Mandalore. You know, so it's kind of cool to see just where everything is.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that it's not really a problem because I get it. It's a piece of printed paper, but it's you're looking at it's a 2D map, right?
Yeah.
So you can't really tell like how like the depth of it.
No, that's true. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to see if they have any kind of scale. Yeah, that's the one thing that it's missing. They don't really have like like X amount of centimeters equals whatever light years or something. But that's just the one thing that they're kind of missing. So yeah, you don't really get a depth per se.
Well, that would ruin their whole the whole thing with Star Wars is that space travel moves at the speed of plot. So if they need someone to get across the galaxy quickly, well, they do that.
Right. I mean, and then you think, the size of the galaxy, compared to, say, our own galaxy, which is, I have been in school for a while. How many planets do we have? 7? 8? I don't.
Well, has Pluto been reinstated?
No, that's a dwarf planet, right? Or some kind of moon. I don't.
Yeah, no, I feel like they kicked it out, and I feel like they brought it back in. And I don't know if they kicked it back out again. It's 8 or 9.
A bunch of people were complaining.
We have 8 or 9 planets.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of planets for one galaxy here. So comparative to our galaxy, it's obviously much bigger.
Well, our that's just talking about our solar system. Our galaxy.
Oh, that's true.
Our galaxy has just as many planets as you might expect, but they're obviously way too far for us to really bother with.
See, you can tell. It's been a while since I've been in science class. I just use solar system and galaxy interchangeably, so it's been a while. But so after the kind of the layout of the galaxy, they give you this cool timeline, and the timeline ranges from 32 years before the Battle of Yavin to about to the Force Awakens.
So that's more or less encompassing the Phantom Menace right through the Force Awakens.
Yeah. So let's say the first event they give you is the galaxy is governed by the Republic. On the capital world, Coruscant, senators from 1,000 worlds meet to debate the future, while the Jedi Order maintains peace and harmony. And then immediately after that, they talk about the Trade Federation. So it's pretty much, they just sum up all the movies. What's cool about this, and something I kind of realized after I bought it, it incorporates Rogue One, but then I'm like, are they going to come up with an atlas every time a movie comes out? So this will be outdated in a few years for sure.
Well, yeah, that's what I want to ask you. Like, yeah, once this book becomes outdated, like the minute they release another one with 3 new planets in it, I would be like, this book is useless.
I know. Well, I mean, then I trade it in for a fraction of the cost and get the next one. Nah, but it's cool because then, it is, if I get this one and I get a new one, this kind of becomes vintage, right? This kind of becomes something from the past, and maybe if I'm lucky down the line, I can keep it as a collector's item. In 20 years, I could sell for a good chunk of money.
Yeah, who knows?
So I just got to keep it in good condition. But what's cool about it, though, is it incorporates the Clone Wars, the prequels, the original, Rogue One, Force Awakens, and as much of Rebels as
as we've seen
by the time this was published. Yeah. So there's a lot with the Inquisitors in here. So they kind of go through that. So then after the timeline, they kind of they put up these historical figures. So just like a nice little illustration of major characters, and a brief little synopsis. And it ranges from OT, prequel, Force Awakens, just the whole thing. And then after that, they kind of just break it down now. So each chapter, per se, is broken down into... So now, see, what would make sense if they did deep core worlds, yada, yada, yada. But I think they do it alphabetically. And they go through... So each planet... I'll just open up one at random. So I just opened up to Yavin 4. And they'll just kind of give you, key events that happened on this planet. So Yavin 4, they talk about New Hope. They talk about Rogue One. They talk about the creatures that are native to the planet. And just kind of fun factoids for each. And they do, so not even just planets. They have a page for the Death Star, a page for Starkiller Base. Just turn the page to Lothal. They talk about the Loth Cat. And just all these little things. So I don't want to spoil too much because there's definitely a lot of fun little factoids, but I thought a couple of things that were interesting I took note of. So on the Jakku page, I don't think they said this in The Force Awakens, but the Nema outpost was founded by the Hutts.
Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting. Yeah. So a little
I did not know that.
Factoid. The Rancor. So I didn't finish all of Clone Wars, so I don't know if this was something that was revealed on that show, but the Rancor are native to Dathomir. Had no idea. Thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. It sounds familiar, but I'm going to go ahead and say I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's where they come from, and I guess people either like captured them, and that's how it ended up on Tatooine and kind of all over. Cool little Force Awakens bit. So back to the deleted scenes. So you know that snow speeder chase that was cut from the movie?
Yep.
I think it might have been in the novelization, but the snow speeders chase is referenced on the Starkiller base page. So it's considered canon in this book, which I thought was very interesting. So, you know, because I know people were kind of going back and forth like, oh, okay, are the deleted scenes canon? What if the novelization differs from the movie? You know, is it still canon? Whatever. So, I mean, if the snowspeeder chase is in the book, then that's 2 instances that it was referenced as canon, even though it wasn't in the movie. So, just food for thought, you know, for those canon debaters.
Yeah, that would seem certainly intentional enough that's yeah. I would say that snowspeeder chase could definitely be considered canon.
All right. And then the last one I thought was kind of cute. The singer from Maz's castle on Takodana, Yuzums. I don't know how to pronounce it. He's like a fuzzy little guy with a little bit of like a little belly.
Yep.
Yep. He's from Endor, so I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, they're creatures from Legends. I forget what book they're in. They might even be in the old Marvel line of Marvel comics, but yeah, Yuzums are an old classic.
Oh, really? See, I wasn't a Legends reader, so totally missed that. But so it's cool, you know, they're bringing stuff back from Legends, and you know, like it's just little things. So I mean, I recommend looking at it if you could like pick it up in a library. You know, if you don't want to buy it, it's definitely a cool read through.
Do people still go to libraries?
I do, but maybe weird like that. I don't know. I like books, you know. I mean, I do. I mean, even though I have audiobooks for some things, I do try to, on the occasion, you know, have physical copies of something. You know, I like the smell of the pages and whatnot, so I don't want to completely get rid of that tradition. You know, it's all also like a matter of convenience too. Like, I like to try to like chisel out some time where I could sit and read. So that's really when I'll incorporate, you know, the physical book. But if I'm like pressed for time and I'm commuting, yada yada yada, that's when like the audio comes into play. But I mean, for something like this, obviously you can't get an audiobook for the Atlas.
That would be very impractical.
It'd be like listening to like a user manual or something. That just wouldn't make sense. But yeah, so totally recommend it. It's a cool read through. I didn't really want to spoil all the factoids, so I just picked out a couple of fun ones.
No, I think it's the right way to go. And especially from a publisher's perspective, I don't think they would want you to spoil much of anything at all, lest people not buy the book because of you.
Right, I'm going to give it to y'all, and then you don't even have to read it.
Yeah, and I'm taking this, you know, a similar approach here with the Star Wars propaganda book. I'm not going to be blowing too many secrets here. So yeah, I mean, anything else to say on the Atlas before I crack into propaganda?
No, I mean, decent price. I think I got it cheaper for what it's. I got it on Amazon, so that's not so great. You know, got to support those local bookstores. But it's listed as $24.99. I got it cheaper. I don't know if it's worth the $25 per se. If you can get it cheaper, definitely do that. Because I feel like $25 is kind of the price of like a hardcover. I mean, some hardcovers I think can go up to like $35 for like a novel. So I think for the content, but again, you are getting some great illustrations, and you know, people did put a lot of hard work into it. So, yep, still recommend it.
Nice. I will. It's on my Amazon wish list. I just need to pull the trigger, or have somebody do it for me.
There you go. When's the birthday coming up?
Actually, as we record, it is January 24th. It's 2 months from today.
All right, start that birthday list.
All right, so Star Wars propaganda. This one had also been on my wish list for a while, and I was just waiting, and then suddenly I said, you know what, I got to put a freeze on my purchases with Christmas around the corner. You never know. And I knew that my mom, every year, she asks what to get me for Christmas, and every year I tell her the same thing, just Amazon. It's the easiest. I'll be happy because I'll eventually get what I want. And she squawks a little bit. She wants to wrap things for her kids, but Mom, take my word for it. Just get me the gift certificate. It's easier for all of us. And so she did. But like a bolt out of the blue, my wife had actually scored this propaganda book for me. She didn't know that I wanted it. She says she didn't check out my Amazon wish list. It is public, so you never know. But anyway, she pulled a rabbit out of the hat. And this book is... Oh, man. I don't know how to classify this book. It is, first of all, like really, really fantastic. It comes in this really gorgeous slipcase. And, and it retails for $40 US, $50 in Canada. So it's by no means a cheap book. But, and it's written by everybody's favorite member of the story group, Pablo Hidalgo.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's written this book. He's written the visual dictionary for The Force Awakens. Did he write? Yeah, I think he did write The Force Awakens visual guide.
I should know. I have that one.
Yeah, so do I. And the visual dictionary for Rogue One. I believe he also wrote that. So he's been a busy bee, aside from answering everybody's ridiculous questions on Twitter. So the book, I mean, this fills in a ton of those details that if you're a major, major Star Wars nerd, like the information that you get from the movies is not enough, this book helps to scratch that itch in a big way. It fills in a lot of the how and why certain things happen. So, for example, one of the most interesting things that I found throughout the book, or actually, I'll back it up. One of the things in The Force Awakens that had me scratching my head was Luke Skywalker's a myth. And going backwards even further into the original trilogy, the Jedi were almost had like a myth status in the galaxy. And why is that? Like, it's not like the Jedi have been gone for eons. In the original trilogy, it was what, 30 years, less than 30 years, 20 years, right? Since 20-ish years, however old Luke is.
Right, 19, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so depending on which movie from the original trilogy you're choosing, it's somewhere between 22 to like 19 years. So for me, it's hard to. I also had a hard time envisioning why had the Jedi passed into legend so quickly. They weren't gone that long. Well, I remember 18, 20 years ago. Doesn't and pretty clearly too. So what happened to them? And one of the things you learn is that the Jedi, having the integrity that they had, they didn't want any part of propaganda. They didn't want to be used as a tool in that way. And so for the most part, they weren't, unless being vilified on the separatist side. So once the Empire took over, they purged a lot of the information. This is not necessarily in the book, but the Empire purged a lot of the information about the Jedi. They killed as many of the Jedi as they could get their hands on. And a lot of the Jedi, the battles we see in the Clone War cartoons and in the movies, the Jedi are kind of removed from, I guess, the public, right? Like you don't see often all kinds of citizens. And I know we did get stories in the Clone Wars like where citizens on various planets did actually come into contact with Jedi, but by and large, it's a big galaxy, and a lot of people just weren't aware of the Jedi anymore. And so you get a good sense of why the Jedi passed into legend status so quickly. Anyway, so the book is written by, it's broken down into like 6 parts. There's an introduction, And then there's a bit on the Republic, and then the Clone War era, the Empire and the Rebellion, and then it moves into the Force Awakens era. And the book is written and told by a Bith. So we all know the Bith species. They're the band from the Cantina in A New Hope, those bulbous head, black-eyed things. And his name is Janor of Bith, and he was a renowned painter, poet, and sculptor from Gorel. And Gorel in itself, there's a little Easter egg referring to a Rebels location. And he painted and he did propaganda art for the Republic, and then later the Empire, and then realizing how crappy they were, he did some work for the Rebellion. So some of the things that we come to learn, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but Easter eggs, something like a reference of Rush Clovis. So people like real eagle-eyed fans of the Clone Wars will pick up on that name. He gets a mention in this book. And you got to really read each of the paragraphs and look through the names, because sometimes they'll pass right by you and you go, oh, wait a sec, what? And then you'll Google the name and you'll be like, oh, right. Now that's cool. Yeah, there's a reference early in the book to a great war between the Jedi Order and the Sith Lords. Nothing more than a reference, but they do talk about it in the era before the Republic. This book does a great job of adding depth to characters. For example, somebody like Chancellor Valorum, who we don't know a whole lot about, but he was feckless and he was weak and unable to lead the Senate. So you get a piece of artwork. It was in honor of the 1000th anniversary of the Republic, and he delegated the design of that to one Sheev Palpatine. And there's all these connective dots throughout the entire book that if you don't read this book, you won't suffer as a Star Wars fan. But man, I'm telling you, if you're a sucker for social political stuff, social economic stuff, this book is right up your alley, because it really paints a different picture than what you were expecting. Like, Count Dooku was a rampant campus speaker. He rallied support for the Separatists by speaking on university campuses throughout the galaxy. Like, who saw that one coming?
That's cool.
Yeah, there's propaganda art from the Separatist side that played where they promoted sort of the quote unquote humane aspect of droids versus what they called clones were weaponized embryos, which is, it presents an interesting ethical and moral debate that we hadn't really I don't know that we really considered anymore, or at any point. Like, we watch the Clone Wars cartoons and we watch the prequels rooting for these clones, right? But we never really stopped to consider the ethical ramifications of a clone army.
Right. I mean, that's interesting that we don't really, at least in the movies and the Clone Wars, that morality, that sense doesn't really come up. And the closest we've gotten to an ethical dilemma was Catalyst, I feel like, in the new canon, as far as what's going on. As far as like the Kyber crystals and using resources of other planets. I like that.
Yeah, and this book really does that. It really paints a lot of what's the word I'm trying to say? It makes you see both sides. So remember the opening crawl from Revenge of the Sith where it said evil is everywhere, there are heroes on both sides. And I remember reading that at the time going, what? What do you mean there's hero on both sides? We're not supposed to be rooting for the Separatists in any way. But, fast forward years later, we learn that Cassian Andor and his family, they were on the Separatist side at one point. Oh, okay. And you read a lot of the points that the separatists were making in this propaganda book, and you're like, damn, like they were right, or at least it makes a fair point.
And that's really the danger of propaganda, right? It gets you agreeing with one side a little bit, and say that side is more towards the dark, and that's how they kind of ensnare you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a battle for the hearts and minds of the people, and it was remarkably effective in the Star Wars galaxy on both sides. Like, this book is full of artwork from on both sides of the fence. There's a couple pieces of artwork credited to Sabine Wren, which is which is really, really cool for Rebels fans. I mean, I just had a blast with this book, an absolute blast. If you're this is not something that if you're a casual fan, I don't think you'll enjoy this. I don't think this is a book that is designed to turn a casual fan into a hardcore fan. I think this book is for the hardcore fan who just can't get enough and needs to know everything.
It sounds like a fair rating. I mean, it definitely is. You're making me want to buy it.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, aside from being a beautiful book, it's probably one of those books that you need to read 2 or 3 times, because it is so. There's probably so many vague references to things that you've seen before that you have to have a real keen eye in order to pick them all out. And I think as we go, there's probably stuff buried in this book that refers to things that have yet to be played out on screen, whether in episode 8 or in Rebels or in a book.
I was going to say, I'm wondering, since, Pablo Hidalgo, the godfather of canon right now, since he's behind it, how much is he putting in that's kind of, these very loose hints of what's to come?
I feel like that's the stuff where they have to really tiptoe very carefully.
Mm-hmm. Or at least stuff that's from the past that they might want to cover. Like you mentioned, the war between the Sith and the Jedi, and how, they commemorated the 1000th anniversary. If that's a hint that we're going to get some Old Republic stuff at some point, we're going to go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another hint, right? Like, when you've put together all the breadcrumbs now, Malachor and this comment from propaganda and Jeddah from Rogue One, we've gotten a lot of references to things that harken back to ancient times. Act 2 seems to be another big one. Jakku, for that matter. Right. All these things seem to be places from the very beginning of, like, who knows what, whether it's the Republic itself or the beginning of the Jedi Order. All of this seems to be pointing backwards at some point. But again, it's not a trivial amount of money for this book. But I would say it's certainly worth it. There are a lot of Star Wars nerds that listen to us that want to know everything. And this book is very gratifying in that way.
And when did it come out? Did it come out around Rogue One?
I believe it came out in October.
Oh, so it's been a while. Okay.
Yeah, it's been out for quite a while. It never fails to enlighten. I really highly recommend this book. And it also comes with 10 prints, if that's your thing.
That you could take out of the book?
Yeah, there's envelopes in the front and back, the front, inside, and inside back covers. And each are stuffed with 5 pieces of propaganda art prints.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, nice little touch there. So that's a very brief look at the Star Wars propaganda book, but I would certainly recommend that you have this on your wish list. If you've got a birthday coming and you're not sure what to ask for, if you're one of those people that you feel like you've got everything, ask for this and pray that you get it, because it's definitely worth your time and money, or your time and other people's money.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, And that's it, man. I feel like we should just call it quits there and let people get on with their busy days.
That's awesome. Sounds good.
So, Steve, thank you once again, sir, for jumping in Journals of the Whilling.
Of course.
And where can the good people find you on Twitter?
On Twitter, I am at JoangoFett.
Nice. And as always, I am at Tumbling Saber. If you have any feedback that you want to leave for us for the show, you know how to do that. You can hit us up on the Twitter, as we just mentioned, or you can find us on Facebook. You can email me, Kyle@tumblingsaber.com. And be sure to hit us up on iTunes and check out the Commonwealth, StarWarsCommonwealth.com. Check out all the shows, well worth your time. And we'll catch you guys in just a few days with episode 60 of the Tumbling Saber podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon. You've been listening to Journals of the Whilling from the Tumbling Saber team, a member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Learn more about the network and its members at StarWarsCommonwealth.com.